Welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of the Three Old Goalies, with our special guest, Jon Busch. Music for the show is provided by the Floodgate Operators. Be sure to check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. The Three Old Goalies are brought to you by thesquad.com, because everybody loves a W. Check out the squad for all your recruiting needs. And now we send you over to EV with our special guest, Jon Busch.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Three Old Goalies. Sort of a convenient time waster in your life, and that's what we're here to do tonight for you. And hopefully at the end of this episode, you will have enjoyed your time, but you still will have wasted it. So sorry, just giving you that heads up front. One thing that we do want to say that we say every time is the Three Old Goalies sometimes veer off into earmuffs land. And so if you've got young goalkeepers listening, you might want to be aware of that and have the earmuffs at the ready. The other thing that we've failed to bring up many times in the past, and I think it's time to refresh it, is these are our opinions on the sport of soccer in the United States, okay? They're ours. You can't have them. You can have your own opinions. And, if you develop your own opinions by listening to us, great. If you disagree with us, that's great too. But as we've said many times, Bone and I predicated this show or this whole podcast idea on similar conversations that we would have sitting around the bar at the coaches convention and telling stories. And that's kind of what it's evolved into. And
definitely
some of these stories. And by the way, if you have a chance, evidently listen to the Ralph Lundy episode, because that guy can tell stories. And so that, again, these are our opinions and these are our stories, and take what you will from them. Nothing that we say is gospel, other than, it's a great sport, and if you can be involved in it, by all means do so. So, with that, I welcome in an alumni of the show, a returning, the prodigal son of the Three Old Goalies, Jon Busch, legend in his own right, is with us tonight. I wouldn't classify him yet, Bone, as an old goalie.
No.
How would we classify him as? Well, he's not an old goalie, but he's a
short goalie.
Whoa! Okay. That was Red Raver, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Red Man Chewing Tobacco.
Straight from Lobster Boy, right away. Here we go.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well.
Whoa. The gloves are off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jon, as you know, has been a guest on the show many times. Jon is the owner of HPG Goalkeeping. You can find out more information about HPG Goalkeeping and their product at www.hpggoalkeeping.com. Jon, welcome in. We have missed you, but we do know that you have been busy as the goalkeeper coach at the Pittsburgh Riverhounds in the USL Championship. And as most people who probably listen to this podcast know, when you're the goalkeeper coach at a USL team, that's in title only, right? You do everything else,
Yes.
from, as you've said, making airport runs to the laundry to the, cleaning the facility. I mean, you do it all. And
other duties as assigned, right?
What'd you say?
Yes.
Other duties as assigned.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So welcome in. We're hoping tonight to share some insight into the USL season this year. They're underway, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Bushy, you're undefeated so far.
We are undefeated.
Yeah,
We're undefeated. Have 4 games in. So
that's great. That's great. Yeah. And I guess because of weather, you've played most of your games on the road in southern climes, or more southern climes than Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we've had one game at home and 3 on the road so far. So we're doing okay. We're doing
That's
okay.
great. That's great.
So.
And so just a little bit of background before I turn it over to Bone. John secured this position, I guess, three months ago. Bushy, 2 months ago.
Yeah, end of December. I moved.
Yeah,
up there.
yeah.
End of December. How many ever months ago that is now?
Yeah, I guess it's 3 because March. We just 3 months. Anyway, you came to USL from Hibs over in Scotland, and I'm sure Bone will ask you about that, so we get some Hibs stories because obviously that's something that American guys in soccer dream about, is being involved in the sport at the pro level in Europe. So.
Yeah.
So, and also joining us tonight again, and we got the Cincinnati group tonight, don't we? We got the Ohio group. We got Greg Deutsch from Cincinnati. We got Greg Raver from Cincinnati, and we got Jon Busch, who I'm sure is driven through Cincinnati, and
I know where it is on the map.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Dayton area, so I drive through Cincinnati a lot. So yeah, we got an Ohio flavor to the podcast tonight, But without further ado, Bone, I will turn it over to you.
Right. Well, first, EV,
okay.
I'm glad you're back. I want to say we missed you. With Ralph Lundy. Coach Lundy, as you said, was probably the funniest show that we've done. And you are 100% right. Trying to get a word in to his stories was very challenging. We had a special call-in guest, Coach Ralph Polson, and he was on delay for like 20 minutes. I'm serious. I was trying to get him in, but like Ralph wouldn't even take a breath. And he just, Ralph Lundy just kept going. So anyway, Braves, I'm glad you're safe. I hope you had a good time wherever you went. What part of Florida were you in?
No, we were in Ponte Vedra for a few days, and then we were in St. Simon's for a week. But we did a lot of driving.
Okay.
Ohio to Florida is pretty far, and but we're all intact with a puppy, and we made it back safe. So we're very happy about that. But just before we jump in, if you don't care, Ben, just real quick, Evie, I know you're in Nashville. Heavy hearts. We're thinking about the town. There's a lot of scary stuff happening there and a lot of tough stuff, but I wanted to call that out. And flags are half-mast everywhere, and we're thinking about the town.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it's it's interesting. I was thinking about it today. It's not even been a week, and and of course with Marcia being an educator, it kind of hit home, and obviously terrible stuff. No one, stuff you just don't, you can't fathom it. You just can't, and I'm not going to get political, although, I spent the last week being political. There's no explaining it. There just is no explaining it. And, but I believe, again, this is my opinion. I believe something has to be done, and hopefully we're getting closer to that point. So,
I have elementary and middle school kids, and I agree. It's just, I throw the politics out the door, and we talk sport, and we all joke, and we all, we have fun, but it's happened far too much, and something has to be done. So
yeah, thanks.
Anyway, we're thinking of you guys.
Thank you. On a lighter note, I don't know if you guys saw this before we get going with phone, because you just made me think of it. I don't know if you guys saw, but the Final Four game between Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. Another show alumni, Robbie Church. Well, his son Kyle, who Bushy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Kyle was a little kid that always had a basketball. He always had a basketball. At soccer camp, that kid had a basketball.
He did. Right? Yeah, he did.
Yeah. No, seriously. He was that kid. He was,
No, I remember him at Vandy. He nonstop.
He always had. He was what they call a gym rat or a rink. We've all seen him in sports. Rink rats and gym rats and guys who that's what they do. Yeah. Well, he's the first assistant coach at FAU, right? And he's on the bench, and I got to tell you, a lot of his coaching mannerisms are just like his dad's.
Are they?
I mean, you can, and I was sitting, and of course, you have to have either know Robbie or have worked with him, but you see a lot of the same mannerisms and approach to a game, that in Kyle that you saw in Rob. And right after obviously it was a heartbreaking loss because the kid hit the shot literally at the buzzer to beat FAU. But I texted Churchy right afterwards and I said, you know what? And I don't know anything about basketball. I really don't. But it was just, you talk about something that was just fun to do, was to watch Churchy's boy coach, and it was a heartwarming thing. So maybe that balances off the Nashville thing a little bit. I don't know. So
yeah. God damn it, Vaughter. God damn it, Vaughter.
Vaughter. So, but again, without further ado,
all right,
I apologize.
Take
it away.
All right. Well, again, Jon Busch, thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to come back on the show. Last time we left off, as you may recall, EV, he had just been let go by Indy 11. And we were wondering what was going to happen. So I just want to jump right into that because, everything in my world and your world, EV, a lot revolves, and probably Greg Raber, as well as Bushy, connections, right? We're always, that who knows who, the Kevin Bacon thing, stuff like that. So, Jon, take us on this path after Indy 11. You were in North Carolina a little bit. You were in Tampa Bay. Obviously, Evie mentioned the Scottish Premier League, as people forget Celtic, Rangers, how exciting. But again, give us your path there. And obviously, there's a very important person that got you into the Scottish Premier League that I'm sure you're going to share that story on how you got there. So take it away, Jon Busch.
So you want me to go all the way back to Indy 11? Is that where you want me to start?
It's not that far. It's not that many years.
That's a few years ago. So finished there. Gentleman came in and wanted to make changes. So that was that. Ended up deciding it was time to hang him up. Signed a one-day contract with the Columbus Crew, retired as a Crew player, and got full-time into coaching. I was already doing a lot of coaching, but now it became my full-time gig. Spent 3, 4, 5 years in Indy, coaching for the Indy Fire Youth Academy, working with several youth national teams, working with IUPUI, both the men's and the women's there, the Division I school. Kind of was looking around at the same time, was very content and very happy there, but also, looking into the MLS and USL and just different things to see where kind of my path would go. And then randomly, I guess it was last January or end of December, a buddy of mine, Sean Maloney, ex-Scottish international, who I played with in Chicago for a season. He ended up leaving the Belgian national team and taking over the Hibernian Hibs and asked me to come over and be his goalkeeper coach. We had stayed in contact since the time in Chicago. We talked quite a bit. We hit it off from the beginning. So I always kind of had this idea and thought, because he told me that if and when, or not if, but more when he got a head coaching position, that he'd be interested to bring me over. If I'm being honest, we didn't expect it to happen until after this past World Cup. So we thought it would be another year on from when it actually happened, and that kind of came out of the blue for him, and it came out of the blue for me. And so, but it was an opportunity that was too good to pass up. It was great experience, even though 3.5 year contract ended in 4 months for all of us. But just the experience to be at that level, to play Celtics, Rangers, Aberdeen's, even some of the smaller clubs, just to be in that environment and to experience that level of football was unbelievable. It was fantastic. And even just Yeah, I was talking about it the other day because we were talking about like scouting goalkeepers and looking at goalkeepers with a buddy. And I said, one of the cool things being over there was you're in a whole different market. You're in a whole different world than what you'd be in the USL or even MLS per se a bit. Like when I'm looking at goalkeepers, I get to, at Hibernian, I get to look everywhere throughout the world. And whether it's look in the French league, look in the Belgian league, look in the German league, watching videos of all these different goalkeepers to find somebody who fits into Sean's style and the way we wanted to play.
What was, from a culture standpoint, maybe the hardest thing for you to adjust being an American?
It's a good question. I think, honestly, when I got there, I was a few weeks late after Sean and the rest of the staff had gotten there solely because the club already had a goalkeeper coach at the club, and work permit wise and all that stuff had to kind of be tidied up. So Sean and the rest of the staff were there a few weeks. So they were kind of already in their swing by the time I got there. But you also have to imagine we're going in the middle of the season, in the busiest time of their season. We're going in, end of January or whatever, it's beginning of January, excuse me. And you're playing every 3-4 days. And so I remember, I got off the plane I left the States on a Wednesday, got there on a Thursday. Team was off on Thursday, trained Friday, trained Saturday, trained Sunday. And then Monday night we were, if I remember correctly, I think we were at Celtic. It was either Celtic or Rangers. It was one of the big two. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And, and like once we had that, it was just, we were off and rolling, So to be quite honest, I don't even think I had enough time to really like pick my head up and look around. We were always working. It was always at the training center. All the assistants lived in one house that was like 6 minutes away from the training center, just because that was the easiest for the club and everybody to do at that moment. So it was just kind of like we saw our house, we saw the grocery store, we saw the training facility in the stadium. And it was just, we got on the circus and in the rat wheel, and we just kept going.
Yeah. Share with us. And you've shared with me before, but I'd like you to share with our viewers, listeners, go through a typical day or morning, day, evening.
Yeah.
Because I think people, and I want to also ask you to compare it to what you're doing now with the USL team to see, you got academy players. I'll let you talk about that. But first, tell us, what was the routine in Scotland on an everyday basis, being the goalkeeper director versus the Pittsburgh Riverhounds?
Yeah. So, our days over there were, first thing in and you're there pretty much all day. I like to get in a little bit earlier than the other guys because I like to try to get my workout done first thing in the morning, because I know once we get into our day, like I'm not going to have time to do it. So I'd usually leave the house at about 7. I get in by 10 past, quarter past, quickly change, wait into the weight room for about an hour. We always started with staff breakfast at 8:30. Then the first meeting would be somewhere between 8:45 and 8:50, and that was all the first team staff and the physio and the strength and conditioning guy. They basically would meet with Sean every morning, talk about the day before's training, where the guys hit their numbers, if somebody was overtrained, who's injured, who's recovering, where are they kind of in their fitness regimen for the week. Sean loved to know everything about all that stuff. He always had his finger on every pulse, which I think was amazing. And so when we finished that meeting, if obviously I just kind of listened, if there was anything with our goalkeepers, then obviously that was addressed to me. But most of the time it was just addressed to Sean and the other coaches about their field players. Once that was done and the plan was set for the morning training with them, they left and went back and started their treatments and whatever they had to do. From there, right away, we went into training for the morning. So that's usually around 9 o'clock. We're talking, timeline. So usually from about 9 to 9:30-ish, it was all the staff discussing training, what Sean wants to get accomplished that day, what drills we were doing, when do they need the goalkeepers, all that stuff. 9:30, when we have all that accomplished, at times when that's being talked about, sometimes we need to go and talk to the reserve team coach, Steve, who was just down the hall, and just make sure their players are in and what time they're coming in and who we need. So there's always that communication, because we always needed some of their players. Their 2 goalkeepers would always train with me. So I had 3 first-team goalkeepers, and then I had their 2. So I always made it a point every morning as well, whether it was at some point during the meeting or after our staff meeting, to go talk to Steve, see what his plan for their training was, because they always started a little bit later than us, and to try to match our times up and what he needed with his 2 goalkeepers. Am I keeping one? Am I keeping both? Does he need both back? And just trying to line all that up. Once I have that conversation, all the coaches go out. Sean goes into, takes his analyst and usually goes into the video room. The assistant coaches go out and set up the fields. I had my area. I would rotate, but I had my area, set up my stuff. The other coaches would set up. Sean usually worked between 2 to 3 fields in different areas, depending on what they had. So everything was set up all together at once. And then when they were training, they would just kind of rotate areas and rotate fields. So they never had to move the cones and pick up the cones and move stuff. Everything was already set up for the day. When that was done, we go back inside. Depending on when Sean wanted the goalkeepers in his training session, and a lot of the times he wanted them pretty quickly, because we were changing the style of play there. He wanted a very possession-based team playing out of the back. And so we wanted our goalkeepers working on that specifically, not just with me and our goalkeeper training sessions, but also with the team. And so more times than not, I would take the goalkeepers out about 10:30, 10:25, 10:30, and make sure they got their goalkeeping part first done. And then the team would come out at 11. So I always wanted to make sure that we focus on our goalkeeping training on those days that Sean needed them 10 or 15 minutes into the session. When that's done, now you're looking at 12:30, 1 o'clock, depending on the day. We go in, we have lunch. When lunch is done, we're back in the coaching office. We're debriefing about training. By that time, the analysts have downloaded training. We had 2 drones that were flying over the training field every day. That's downloaded so we can all watch it and pick and choose what we need to see. We did that. We might start discussing the next opponent, depending on what day of the week it is. We'll start discussing what we need to accomplish the next day in training. So now you're looking at 3:30, 4 o'clock or so. A lot of times Sean would usually go back into the video room with the analyst again and start looking at more videos, whether, again, it was us from the weekend past or preparing for the weekend coming up. So now you're looking at close to 5 o'clock, 5 to 6 o'clock, somewhere in that ballpark. And then when everybody's done and everything's been accomplished for that day, then you're heading home. So.
How I don't want to say dead, but like how exhausted are you from that? Just going all day, and again, include now what you're doing with Coach Lilly and how it differs maybe from what you experienced with Sam.
Yeah, I think in one aspect, I absolutely loved it because it's top level football. You're talking about big time players. You're talking about big time teams. You're looking at. You're always watching. But for me personally, and Evie and I have talked about this, and so Raver and I. I'm an all or nothing guy. I'm all in. And so balance in my life was not there. Like I was 7 days a week, even on like when we had a day off, I would be looking at video. I would be thinking about goalkeeping. And again, at times that's good. And other times I realize like, in essence, I don't have a life. I don't have anything else going on. So that's something that I've had to address, both there and then when we got, obviously released, and kind of moving forward and prioritizing what's, yes, I'm still very serious about my football, but at the same time, like I have to have balance in my life, and that got away from me. And it got away from me pretty badly. So as I came back to the States, and I spent some time with my mom and my sister in North Carolina, and just kind of thinking about where I want to go next and my next move and all that stuff. I really tried to focus and figure out things that I like outside of football. And I got into hiking trails and things like that. So from there, once I was ready to kind of get back in the football thing, I went down to Tampa Bay and worked for a youth academy for two of my buddies down there, basically from August to December. And I kind of said to them, like, listen, I'm still trying to figure out my ultimate path. I don't know if this is going to be a long-term thing in Tampa, but I kind of need a job from August to December. Can you help me out? And they were great about it. They said, yeah, come down. I lived with one of the guys and his wife, and I had known them from Indiana. So it was an easy situation for me. And it got me back on the field again. It got me around goalkeepers and all that stuff. And it still allowed me the time. We didn't have to do anything in the morning, so it was nice. I could work out. I could, go to the pool. I could sit and just kind of think about things I needed to prioritize in my life. And then in the late afternoons and the evenings, that's when we started coaching. And the kids were great. The goalkeepers I loved working with, but there was just something missing still. I wanted to be back in that pro environment. Once you get a taste of it, you want to be there. I want to be in an environment where, 3 points is your focus, and winning championships is your focus. Not that it's not at the youth level, but at the pro level, obviously, your jobs depend on it, as players and coaches. So I still kind of crave that. And the other thing I started realizing more and more down there was I was on the field till 9:30 every night. So I'm eating dinner at 10 o'clock, and I was like, I'm getting too old for this. 46. I'm 46 years old. Like I want to eat at a normal time and not at 10 o'clock at night. So that, it sounds funny, but those kind of things were really rattling around in my brain. I had some conversations with some MLS clubs, first team situations, academy situations, came close on a few, but things just didn't quite line up. And, I played for Bob about 100 years ago when he was coaching at Hershey. And so we've always kind of had this, I would basically call it an ongoing conversation. He tried to get me there 2 or 3 years ago. It just didn't line up. So we touched base again while I was in Tampa. He told me what he's got going on, in the goalkeeping world, in the Riverhounds. I told him kind of what I needed to move in that direction. And within a few weeks, he had it taken care of. And I decided that, I want to go work for Bob. Like I said, I've known Bob. I've known him for many years. He's a straightforward guy. Tells it like it is, a little bit old school, which I love. But I also know that he's a person that if he says something, it's going to happen. And so, he got the deal done. He had to go to the owners a little bit and talk to him, but explains to the owners, what my value is going to be, not just for the first team, but also for the academy and overseeing that whole department for the goalkeepers. Moved up here end of December. We had 2 combines right away pretty quickly, early January. So kind of jumped right into it there. And then we had a few weeks where we were working just in the office. And as EV said, when you're doing, in essence, minor league professional sports, you do quite a few things. And so one day or 1 hour, I might be talking about a goalkeeper or talking about salaries. And the next hour I'm, taking the Adidas stuff to the screen printer or, checking on the apartments because we got players coming in. And, one day I was changing shower curtains because one was old and one was new. So, you just, I loved it though. You jump in and you just do what you need to do because it's got to get done. There's only one other assistant coach here, Dan Visser. He's been here. This is his 6th year together with Bob, and him and I fit together very well. Obviously he does a majority of the stuff that Bob doesn't want to do, and they have a very good rhythm. So I just basically followed his lead, and every day I'd say, tell me what you need me to do, Vis. Like, you've been here, you've done it. Tell me what you need. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. So going back to your question, so my day here is actually quite similar, to Hibbs, where again, I get up early, so I like to be in the facility early. The good thing is I live 4.7 miles from the training center. It's literally a 6-minute drive. So I get up, I leave my house by 7:15. I'm in there by 7:25. I get the coffee started first there. I have my first cup here, but I get the coffee pot started there because that's very important. And then, I start thinking about the day and what we need and making sure, I'll have a quick look in the locker room, making sure the gear's all set up for the boys back in their lockers. We have people that do their laundry, so we don't luckily have to do that. But, I just want to make sure everything – I like it being quiet before Bob and Vis get in. Vis has kids, so he gets them on the bus, and then he comes in. So I'm probably in there for 45 to an hour by myself. I check everything out. I start double checking the session that I've written down from the day before, the night before that I want to do with the guys. And then after that, I usually change into my training gear and I'll go out to the field, whether we're inside or outside, and I'll start setting up my stuff. I usually try to have that all done before Bob gets in, just in case he needs me for anything or he wants to have any conversations. Those two are usually in about 8:30, 8:45-ish, so somewhere in that ballpark, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe closer to 8 some days, but and then we're on the field at 10. We have training, finish that. I usually bring my lunch in because I like to have lunch right after training. And then here I work out in the afternoons. So I get my work done. I write up my training sessions, get them in my notebooks. I record every training session as well. So I make sure that gets downloaded from the VO onto our platform so all my first team goalkeepers can watch it. So once I've kind of tidied up everything from the day and I've talked to Bob about anything we need to talk about, and then, checked in with Vis, and, some days there's stuff for us to do, some days there's not. Usually about 3:00, I'm trying to get into the gym. The great thing is the facility that they just built here for the first team in the academy, literally the next door over from our locker room is the weight room. So it's easy for me just to walk out our door, walk in there, get my session, get my workout in. And then kind of when I get back in from that, it's now my mind starts really changing hats into the academy, because the academy start coming in about 4:30. I have 4 staff members that work for me, 4 goalkeeper coaches. So majority of the time, I don't have to do the sessions. I don't have to stay. They know the sessions I want them to run, and I give them the freedom to run that. I've watched them for many, many weeks now. We've had numerous staff conversations. I've talked to them about, them writing their sessions up, sending them to me. I wanted to see them in the early days to make sure they, I understood their thought process. They understood my thought process. So this has been an ongoing thing for many, many weeks now. And now we're in a situation where I'm 100% comfortable with all 4 of them running it. And it's more of a little bit of a maintenance thing for me. Just every now and again, if I feel like hanging out a little bit longer, I may stay and watch the sessions, make sure everything's good. If I feel like we had a longer day and I want to go home, I'm usually leaving at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So it really just depends on me and what I want to do, which is nice because I've had many more nights since I've been here. I'm home cooking dinner and not, eating Chipotle at 10 o'clock at night. So it's been nice.
Well, I want Greg Raber to jump in. I know he's got a question or two for you. So Rabes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Bushy. And obviously we're friends. We talk all the time, and I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's not every time you get to hang out with your hero. When I was 14 years old and you went to the Final Four, you were my hero. That's the reason I wore black all through college. Because that's what you did, because you told me it made us look bigger. It did not make me look bigger, but
was that the bullshit I came up with for you? That's a good answer.
Yeah, I remember you telling him that.
Yeah, and not to mention, you also
got a big one on the line.
You took me on a test drive to buy a rental car.
I do remember that.
That was the most terrifying experience of my young life. But nevertheless, so from IBS to the whole journey, what would you change? What did you learn? And what are you going to do different?
I would change the way I handled certain situations leading up to the Hibs. I would definitely change every way I handled that. Would not change going, even though I got fired we all got fired in 4 months, because it was an unbelievable experience.
Well, everybody gets fired in your job. Everybody gets fired.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and EB and I talk about it all the time. Regardless of your head coach, assistant coach, where you get hired, you get fired. I think
absolutely.
I think the hardest thing for me, it was the first time I'd gotten fired or released or whatever you want to call it as a coach. Right? I've had it 3 times as a player in the MLS. Right? I've never had it as a coach. And more importantly, it was the first time I've ever seen a good friend of mine who's the head coach get fired. And so it was like, I remember that Tuesday morning, I just finished in the gym. I was showering and I was summoned into Sean's office, not our coaching office, Sean's office. And when I walked in a few minutes later, like everybody was in there, I was like, something's going on. And that's when Sean told us, that I was like, the look on my face, I couldn't comprehend what was happening at that moment. So to see my buddy, take a bullet all of a sudden and then realize, wow, we're all going too. It was hard to take. It was really, really hard to take because I know how much Sean put into that job. I know how much we all put into our pieces of that puzzle. And so for me, that was the first time as a coach, and it really hurt. It really was a kick in the balls, if I'm being honest, and knocked me backward. But I wouldn't change it. I think I'm tougher for it. I think I understand the business a little bit better now. I would ask more questions. That's for sure. I didn't ask enough questions. I chased the shiny object per se a little bit on it, but I would definitely go. I would love the opportunity to go again. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it's not something that I'm saying I wouldn't go. I would have done things differently leading up to it for sure. Sure. I think, but as you said, everybody gets fired and everything's a learning experience in life. For me, I look at things differently now. I ask many more questions. I'm not just this happy guy to go anywhere. I want one of the major things, and we've talked about it. E and I have talked about it numerous times. But until you go through it in these environments, you also understand what's really important in the staff and the people you work with. And let's look at Pittsburgh for what it is, right? I love being here. I love what I do. and I've told Evie, the owner's an awesome guy. He's a blue collar Pittsburgh guy, walks around in his work boots and his jeans, right? Like, awesome. His name's Tuffy. Everybody calls him Tuffy. He's a fantastic man. He fits with Bob. Bob fits with him, right? It's a Pittsburgh thing. Like, you can see it through and through. But they're just good people. And I think that's one of the other things I've learned is, there's no glitz and glamour here, which is kind of who I am. But you want to be and work with people that you value, that they value you, that you trust, they trust you. You want to be in that good environment. I want to be in an environment where I am pushed every day to grow as a coach, to learn, to look at different people's opinions. We may not agree. I mean, I've told EB stories already. Bob and I don't agree on certain things, but at the end of the day, like, he's the boss, so he has the final say. But the conversations that we have about goalkeepers and how they do things, and he wants a very active goalkeeper and this, that, like, I'm learning every single day. And that's it. That's the environment I want to be in, regardless if it's MLS level, USL level, academy, whatever. I want to be challenged. I want to learn. I want to grow as a coach and as a person. And I feel like I really, really have that right now.
Yeah, I want to hear you mentioned you would ask more questions. Be a little bit specific in that for us. What questions would you have asked?
I would have asked about the staff. I would have asked about the club more. I would have asked about what's the setup. How much am I involved in the reserve team, which is, in all honesty, it was our under-19 team. That was the reserve team up there. How much am I involved in the academy? What is my role, right? This is one of the conversations I had with Sean of, again, the entire staff was working together for the first time. And, I knew two of the other guys because I met them at Sean's wedding, but we've never worked together. And Sean and I played together, but we've never worked together in this environment. And you think about a lot of these things during it, but more importantly, after it's done, when you look back and you go, okay, like, I didn't really know my role in that environment, like on a game day. What was my role, right? It wasn't defined to me. And so I did a lot of thinking, when I was at the pools in Tampa, and wrote a lot of notes of just like questions to ask. And I think that was one of the biggest things is, and I said it to Bob when I first came up here, like, I want you to define my role. Yes, it's training goalkeepers and developing the 3 younger goalkeepers we have here. I get that. And I understand what you want, in the academy. I'm overseeing 4 trainers and that sort of thing. But, like, for instance, what is my role on game day? Am I solely working with the goalkeepers, and only focusing on them? Is there something else? Am I in charge of free kicks? Am I in charge of the substitutions? Am I in charge of, define it, like spell it out, and so now I know where I stand. And again, it's a little different here because, there's 3 of us, Bob, this, and me. Like, that's it, right? Over there, you had Sean, Gary, Dave, Valerio, then me, right? So I'm layers down, which I'm part of the staff, but again, and now I've also gotten over there later, and they're already in the swing of things, and I'm trying to catch up to speed. So I didn't know, am I allowed to say anything on the bench? Am I not? I don't say a lot anyway. I'm usually just taking my notes, but it's like I didn't know where I stood at times. So I really just try to focus on the goalkeeping side of things where, Lils has said to me here, like, no, I want you to have a voice with the boys. Don't force it. Don't try to, create it. Just let it happen naturally. It will happen for you. You're an outgoing guy. So it was much clearer for me with Bob right away. And I think, again, him and I have known each other since I played for him. There's less layers, if you want to call it, to the staff. So I'm much more involved in everything right away. So basically the way we have it broken down now on game days is, Vis and I will go over the free kicks, defensive, offensive. We'll kind of present them to Bob. Bob has the final okay on it, or if there's something we need to tweak, we tweak it. And when that's done, all right, we're good. We'll put them up in the locker room. On the bench, obviously Vis is his right-hand man. I'm in charge of the sub passes. And I never thought I would be so scared of my life as the first game, because I got, Bob standing up yelling, "Let's go, let's get him in." And I'm going, who's he going in for? And then I got the list of like, what number is it? Because you got to have like the number and the name. And I'm like trying to write as fast as I can. And I got Bob saying, "What are we doing? Let's go." And I'm like, so it's kind of funny. But I know my role, and when it's clearly defined, that's what I like, because I understand exactly where I stand, and there's still times where, Bob's standard is very, very high on everybody, himself, the staff, the players. And, there's been 3 or 4 times where, you get the old look, turn around, what's your goalkeeper doing? And then you have this discussion for about 30 seconds on the bench, and it's always fun. It's always interesting. My response these days is, that's why I'm putting it in my notebook. Yep, I got it in my notebook. I'll look at the video tomorrow, so, but it's been great. And that's the environment I want to be in. Again, irregardless of the level. I want to be pushed. I want to learn. I want to grow as a player. And, I think I've got that right now for sure.
Yeah. Evie at the top of the show mentioned you had some funny Scottish stories for us to share. So we want to dig into a little of that. Before you go into that though, I'd like to hear your just perspective on playing at Rangers or playing at Celtic, because most of us are never going to experience what that is like. So take us through that. I think those are the 2 prominent clubs that a lot of our listeners know. So share again what that was like, and then get into, some stories that you think is funny that would be, good for our listeners to listen to.
I'm actually going to interject really quick. When I'm waking up having my coffee on a Saturday morning and I get a picture of Celtics locker room, I just write back to John, "You're the worst."
No, you didn't say that. You said something else, but it's okay. We'll just say that on.
It's a family program.
The cool thing with Bushy, in playing off of what Rabe said, Bone, is, before every game, Bushy would send like a text video, and he'd stand out in the middle of the pitch and just, pan around the whole stadium, and it was really, that is really cool. Fucking cool.
But he didn't realize that the microphone was on, because he's like, "This is amazing." And you're talking and like, we're hearing you as like a young boy. It was amazing. It was a really cool experience to wake up to.
Yeah. The funny thing was, as soon as I got fired, I deleted all those.
Good,
because I don't have any of them. Celtics was, it's a big stadium. It's very up to date. It's really nice. And it was really interesting to then go to Rangers, where it's, in certain aspects, it's up to date, and it's, the latest this and the latest that, but the front of theirs was still this old school wood. And so when we walked in from the bus and out from the bus, like, it's just this kind of wood that's, darkly stained. And it was just really cool, because it was like a combination of 2022 and whatever, 1980 or something. It was going back and forth in 2 different worlds. It was really, really cool to see. But again, those are the 2 teams, I hate to say it, but those are the 2 teams that have all the money. So they've got international players because they're in Champions Leagues, and they're playing in that. So their budgets are so much bigger than others. Hearts is up there a little bit. They've got they're probably the 3rd biggest, and Hibs is right there with them. But then everybody else after that is just, they're scrapping, they're scrapping. And, so you could go from a 60,000 seater one weekend to, a 4,000 seater the next weekend. And every one of them had history and nostalgia. And I didn't know this, but Dundee and Dundee United are literally like not almost side by side, but not quite side by side, but they're on the same road. They're on the same street. Just there's literally two stadiums. And I'm like, I'm doing this as I'm sitting on the bus. Like, am I seeing this? And one of the players explained to me, like, literally, that's Dundee and that's Dundee United. It was kind of cool. But again, the reality is there's more of the teams on the outside of that big budget like Celtic and Rangers do. But yeah, it's really cool when you go there. It's, the crowd's fantastic. It's a massive crowd, and the smaller clubs are up for it, right? Because they're trying to kill Goliath. And so you go there, and we went there swinging, and we played some good football for a while. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when they can pay the transfer fees and go buy players that they do, like, ultimately that's, it's hard to compete with in the bigger picture.
It's the golden rule, man. He who has the gold makes the rule.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was awesome. Like I said, I loved it. Loved it.
Thank you for sharing that. Any funny stories that you want to share with us about your time over there?
Honestly, I just kind of went about my business and worked.
How about the next door neighbor, John? The kid that came banging on the window all the time. That one's
cool. Oh, the little kid. So we lived in this little cul-de-sac, and we were the house that the club had rented for us was part of this hotel, but we were off enough of the hotel. Like you didn't know we were there. And there were 4 houses, and apparently other ex-Hibs coaches and staff had lived there. I guess this was the place that they used because it was just so close to the training center. So there were 4 houses, but only 2 of them, ours and one others, really only had people in it. The other 2 were always empty. But there was this family that was living in this one, and the front window, we had a chair right by the front window, and the TV was there, and they had 2 kids, and all of a sudden, just this one of their young kids would just come over the window when he saw me sitting there, and I'd be watching TV, and he'd just come over and he'd just kind of stare at me through the window, and then he'd knock, and then he'd run away, and he'd come back a few minutes later, he'd knock again. So one day I went out and I started playing with him. They had a ball and doing whatever, and we had a good time, and then his dad came out and we introduced ourselves. But, again, a lot of times it was just, I'm a creature of habit. I like my routines. I didn't go out much. I go to the training center, I work out, I come home, I eat dinner, that sort of thing. And that was the cycle that we were in. So for me, there wasn't a lot of extracurricular. I went to one of the international weekends. I went to the beach, probably the only weekend that it got above 60 while I was there. And I went in sweatshirt and sweatpants, and I think I even had a hat on, and it was like 62 degrees. And these people are running around like it's 95. They were, it's hot out, it's hot out. They're running around on the beach like in shorts without a shirt. I'm like, I'm freezing my ass up over here. So it was kind of amusing, but it was a beautiful beach. But that was probably about the only weekend that I actually kind of picked my head up for a little while. So, again, it's one of those things where I look back now and I say, maybe I should have done more and adventured out a bit more in Edinburgh. But, I was there to do a job. And I think, if we would have survived and got into the next season and we each got our own apartments that we were starting to look at downtown, it would have been a little bit easier because every one of us was going to have our own apartments. And I had picked mine out, nice 1-bedroom downtown, and you could walk to all the restaurants. You could do everything. Like, I was really looking forward to that part of life, and it just unfortunately never got to it.
Yeah.
Hey, John. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ray.
No, I was going to say, and what does it mean to you since I think everybody here knows it, being inducted to the UNCC Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's really special. I'm still trying to figure out how, since I left school after three seasons. Like, I guess.
Well, and the bicycle kick, you know.
And listen.
Wow,
I mean,
seriously,
who brought this guy
mackerel.
Who brought this guy into that?
He's got sunstroke. Sorry, he's got sunstroke.
He's
delusional.
Seriously, unbelievable. And considering the AD at the time didn't get, we didn't see eye to eye, so that didn't help either. But somehow it made it. I don't know, Rabes. No, it's it was such an honor to receive that a few years ago, and then finally be able to have the ceremony for everybody that was in that year, in that class of Hall of Fame people. And I'm just one person representing so many quality players over the last every years before me, after me. There's been far better players that have come through that program, but to be the first soccer player to be inducted into the Hall of Fame is really quite special. And it was nice to be there for that weekend and celebrate. And I take it as, a big honor because I'm representing the past and the present and the future.
Yeah, John brought you in. If he was there, that was the golden years of UNCC. I mean, that team was awesome. It was really cool to see. We
worked really, really hard. I don't know if we played good football, but we ran. We were the fittest team in, I think, probably college history. Yeah.
Well, that's because Frank turns you into a cross-country team, but nevertheless.
Yeah. No, we played some good. I mean, sometimes like in college. All right, it's college. You have some games that are great, and you have some games that are awful, and you have some games that you probably shouldn't have won, but somehow the other team didn't want to win more than you did, so you did win. And that's just college, and in college, particularly in playoffs, you look at it every year. A lot of teams, the team that gets on a roll usually wins, right? Yeah, and I agree. A lot of times they're not the best team. Many times they're not the best team.
But it's like hockey. It's the best goalie.
Yeah, they get the best goalkeeping. They get on a roll. Their confidence is good. They get some breaks. They get maybe the first game at home or whatever it is, and they win. And so that's in college. And getting back to the Hibbs thing quickly, for those of you who might be out there wanting to be a professional coach, okay. Listen to me. The Gandalf of goalkeeping is going to give you some nuggets here. Okay. And Bone, you know this from coaching the Cheetahs, right?
The Cheetahs.
It's a terrible beauty being a pro coach, right? Because there's only one thing that matters, and it's what did you win or not?
Yeah.
Right. And it's fine if you can live within those parameters and work within those parameters and know that you're as John said, you're probably not going to get everything you want financially. So you gotta coach. You got to figure out a way to get it done. And at the end of the day, nothing, developing young men or young ladies doesn't make a hill of beans. It's whether you won or lost or drew. And John's experiencing it now with the Riverhounds. We used to say at the Dynamo, win at home, draw on the road. You can do that, you're golden.
Yeah.
You're always going to steal a game on the road here and there, or the other team's going to give it to you. But as a pro coach, if you can win at home and draw on the road, you're magic. But that's what it comes down to. It doesn't come. Yeah. Nothing else matters. Nothing. I mean, and that to me, that's as I say, it's a terrible beauty because it's results oriented, and it's cold hard fact of did you win or not.
Yeah. You look at the USL alone last year, right? You look at San Antonio, and they play the same way this year. Everything's direct. They have a fantastic goalkeeper, Jordan Farr. I used to train him in Indy when he was there. Great goalkeeper. He's really come into his own there. But the way they play is just direct. At the end of the day, if you look at probably every game they've played in the last year and a half, they probably have 20, 30, 40% possession. But they don't care. They know their identity. They know what – and they won the championship last year playing that way. And at the end of the day, they're the last one standing on the last day. And there's a lot of teams – there's a lot of good teams, but there's a lot of good teams in this league that want to play the toka-toka, and yes, it looks good on the stats and the possession numbers and all that, but bottom line is you have to win games. You have to win games. And, it was funny. I was telling EB the other day, I had to have that chat with the two youngsters here the other day. I've got a gentleman named Jamali who's the starter. He earned it about halfway through last year. Now, so it's his right now to lose. He's also the Jamaican number 2. He just played for Jamaica against Mexico last week. So he's starting his career, and I think he has a very, very big upside coming to him, hopefully, if we find that consistency. 23. So if we find that consistency in his game, day in, day out, game in, game out, I think he's got a huge upside. But I had to have the chat the other morning with the other two. They're straight out of college. Great kids. They work hard, but we just came back off a day off, and, they were a little bit slow, a little bit lackadaisical and that sort of thing. And so I finally said to him, and this has happened one or two other times, again, it's that they're still a little bit stuck in that college mentality, And so I just said to him, I said, you guys understand what it means to be a pro, right? They kind of shook their head. I said, okay, do you really, explain it to me? And they kind of fumbled around with their words for a little lesson. Okay. This is what a pro means. You get paid to play. You get paid to train. You get paid to win games. I said, you don't win games, you can get fired. And I can go find a goalkeeper that can win me games. I said, it's as simple as that, right? Because at the end of the day, that's ultimately what it comes down to,
Yeah.
Am I here to develop them? Yes, I'm here to develop them. But more importantly, Bob, myself, we have to win games. Because if we don't win games, we're not going to be here long term to develop them anyway.
Yeah, but you're actually refining them. You're not teaching them. You're not teaching.
No, you're teaching. Right. I mean, you're teaching the college kids a little bit more, the college players a little bit more, but they're still young goalkeepers.
Well, you're teaching them, like you said, you're teaching them to be pros.
You're teaching them to be pros. Yes.
Yeah, it's a different. The goalkeeping is the same. Keep the ball out of the goal.
Yeah.
But the different, and again, we found this. I found this at Greensboro. We get some kids who are good college players. But they weren't, like John said, well, we went out last night till 4:00 in the morning. Well, you know what? You don't do that when you're a pro.
No.
If you want to keep your job,
because
there's somebody down the street who wants your position and they're out working you. And as John said, the coach is like, you know what? I can get this guy for a little bit cheaper, and he wants to fucking win. That's a no-brainer. And that's just, I'm sorry. That again, that's the terrible beauty I talk about. It's like, as John said, you don't play well enough, you get fired.
Well, that's why sport's amazing. It's an meritocracy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a meritocracy. You're either good enough or you're not, and move along.
Yep. Yeah.
You can.
And on that note, John, you've been around the world now. You've seen some incredible facilities. So talk a little bit about the one at Pittsburgh. In case you guys don't know this, first of all, it's one of the largest sports complexes in the country. 78 acres.
Wow.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I didn't even know it was. Okay. All right.
So explain to us, you've been in the MLS, you've been in Scotland. Share with us how this rates to some of these facilities that you've actually, played in or visited.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the reason I was really interested, Lil's told me, look, get online. There's not a lot of pictures, but look at the new facility they just opened for us. Like, first team hasn't even trained there yet. And they're still putting on the bells and whistles right now as we speak. But it's in this smaller little town, Coriopolis, and it's right off the highway. But it's just, you pull in and you see Pittsburgh Riverhounds on one side of it. First team's on the first floor, academy's on the second floor. They built it hand in hand with a rehab facility, here in Pittsburgh. So they kind of have the other side of the doctor's offices and all that. But we go right into ours. We have our offices that leads into our staff locker room, which leads into the players' locker room. They finally, the lockers were delayed. They got them in last week. Nice wood, stained wood, like fantastic. You keep walking through, you go past the bathrooms and showers, the equipment room, you go out the back door and you're right into the massive indoor center, which is a full-size field. Inside, it's got a running track above it as well. Parents usually hang out there to watch the academy kids in the evening. You go out the side door. There's 3 turf fields right now outside. By middle of the summer, behind the tree line on the backside, they're going to add 7 more fields to it. I think they're still trying to figure out how many grass, how many turf, but we'll have 10 training fields, complete training fields by summertime.
Amazing.
And it's like it's state of the art. They have not skimped on anything. It may not be as big as some of these, bigger MLS clubs as far as field wise and all that, but I know what I've seen through MLS and in Europe, like when I pull up every morning, I'm like, this is proper. Like, I feel like I'm at a proper training center and a proper professional club. And I think the more it gets out and the more, these USL pros and other pros hear about it and see it, and there's videos being popped around about it and whatnot, they're going to go, wow, not only can I go play for a coach that wins things, I can go and I can train in that facility every day. Like, yeah, I want to be there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, and I'm glad Evie got you on the show because I'm curious for this next question. The current USL players you have, could they play, not just come on as a sub here and there in the Scottish Premier League?
Say that one again? Sorry.
Could any of the current Riverhound players go over and play in Scotland with the team you currently came from? Not even. No. And tell us, what is the difference? No. I know it's going to be small, but tell me, besides the consistency, what is the difference?
The consistency, the physicalness, again, outside of Hearts, Rangers, Celtic, and Hibs, everything is just hit into your zone and your half, and they press the hell out of you in Scotland. Celtic plays, Rangers play, Hibs we played, and Hearts plays a little, But outside of that, it's dump it and let's go. And it's, they are in your face. It's 100 miles an hour. They want to put you under pressure and basically have you cough balls up. So I think the physicalness,
knockdown. You play for knockdowns and set pieces.
Yeah. And then, and it was interesting because there were 2 players at Ibs at the time that had played in the MLS. So we would have those conversations quite often. One's actually back in the MLS. Chris Mueller's at Chicago. And then there was a Scottish kid, one of our, right back, who played for Columbus for 1 year and then went back over. And we talked about it all the time. I think we're more technical here in the States, but I think the physicalness and just the sheer just let's get after it over there. And again, it's the MLS has come a long way. The USL is coming an even farther way, but at the same time, again, not having relegation and not being in those dogfights, like that's a different world still. You don't make the playoffs in the MLS and you don't make the playoffs in the USL. Like you don't get relegated. You don't lose millions and millions of dollars.
Great point, John. Great point. Let me ask this a little bit about salaries without you, pointing out, individuals making X, Y, Z. How would you rate the pay in the current USL and take away the Rangers and Celtics for the most part? As you said, they're on a different level. As far as the pay, how would you compare that?
It's interesting because the USL has a salary cap, or not, a players union now, not salary cap. They have a players union now. And so, and Bob kind of was explaining all this to me in early December, when it came up and we all kind of know the old salaries, right? Like back in the day. I mean, he was saying even, handful of years ago, a $15,000 player then is now like a $30,000 to $35,000 player because of the union and everything they've added to it. And so, the salaries have gone up. The travel and all the other things, the amenities we'll call it, have also gone up to an extent. Again, you can't go from A to Z in the alphabet. But the fact that they have this players union now for the USL players, it's like the MLS. It's going to continue to get better. And each time they have a new negotiation, they'll move the pendulum a little bit more, just like we did in the MLS in the early days. I mean, the early days, and people probably forget it by now, but that first players union agreement, we were just fighting for direct deposit. Like people think, like you think it's funny now, right? But it's like, the office staff in every MLS club had direct deposit. The players did not have direct deposit. That was one of the things we asked for in the first players agreement. Can we please have direct deposit? And to think how far that's come, and I don't know how many agreements it's been, 3, 4, 5, whatever it's been by now, but it's going to be the same with the USL. It's going to be smaller things, right? Because the TV is getting better, but there's no revenue like it is in the MLS and things like that. But again, it's just about continuously moving the pendulum. Can you get whatever? Can you get more per diem on the road? Can you get better training facilities or better travel experiences or things like that? Can you just continue to move within reason, move the pendulum? Because again, it is still minor league sports, and probably every owner in the USL is losing money.
Yeah, I mean, reality hits you when you go play Tulsa, right? You're playing on a baseball field, and slaps you right in the face. Especially after you just shared with us the great facility that Pittsburgh has, and then you got to go play there. And we see pictures of you guys on a baseball field. Sort of depressing, right? With everything you just said, and then there's the flip side of it.
Yeah, and again, you have to be open-minded to all this, right? Like, and again, talking to Evie the other day on the phone, it's like, in one breath, we've come so far in certain things, again, in the USL, and you see this unbelievable facility that I get to drive into every morning. But again, it's still minor league professional sports in America. And you get that reminder when you walk into a baseball stadium in Tulsa or the baseball stadium in Memphis. I mean, there's probably going to be a few more along the road here, but it's just, that's where we are. That's the reality of it, as we continue to move in this journey in the USL, hopefully more and more teams become like Louisville's and some of these other places. Indy 11 is now got everything approved to build their stadium in I think it's 2025 or whenever it's supposed to be there. So hopefully, the stability of the league is there. The stability of the owners seems to be there. Now can we one by one kind of chip away and create all these stadiums and get out of baseball stadiums?
Yeah.
But you think about the early days of MLS too. Pretty much everybody was playing in football stadiums.
Right. Yeah.
So, John, what do you think the probability or possibility that MLS and USL get it together and start that relegation program and really get together? Or does one absorb the other?
Well, I mean, MLS now has basically their own reserve league. So they don't really even have MLS teams in the USL anymore.
Right.
They're going to do their own thing. USL is going to do their own thing. They're going to pretty much play nice in the public, but I don't think they really want anything to do with each other.
So it's open cup and that's it.
It's going to be open cups. Yeah. As far as the pro and relegation, my guess is you might see it in the USL before you would probably see it in the MLS.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I was going to ask you, the same question about the Scottish Premier League. Take that, throw that one away and put MLS. What's the difference between some of your players and, again, the MLS players? And, again, I know you're going to say consistency, but now we're not, not every damn MLS team's trying to press, as you alluded to with, the Scottish Premier League.
No, I mean, again, I think most of that.
Here's really I'm going. What's the fine line? Because you guys got some former, pro MLS guys. You got some MLS, next pro. So they're like right on that doorstep, right?
Yeah.
But they're probably getting paid a little bit better with you, a little bit better opportunity to play. So what's the separation?
I think it's a few things, right? I think it's, again, it goes down to consistency, day in, day out. Week in, week out, game in, game out. Do you get the opportunity? Do you have that luck that, gets you in that lineup and then keeps you in that lineup? I had the luck many years ago. Tom Prestis rolls his ankle. I finish one game. We have a short week. I get to start that next Wednesday on a short week. I get a clean sheet and boom, I'm off and rolling. Right. So you need that. You need that luck, as well. For instance, if you're a forward, whether in USL, you want to be, you want to peak interest in MLS, score goals and score them consistently, right? Everybody wants a goal scorer. So if you're a forward, you're a 9, you're a 10, you're, in those positions, attacking, whatever, like put the ball in the back of the net. You're going to get people's attention. Do your job. But again, it's about, and I say it to Jamali every day. Every day here we talk about is like, be consistent. Be consistent every day in training. Be consistent every weekend in the game. You're not going to give me a 10 out of 10 every game. I know that's not going to happen. But the best pros, regardless of what league, I've said, on a scale of 1 to 10, they will give you a 7, 8, or 9 pretty much every game. You might get a
10 when you need it.
A 10 when you need it. And, there's going to be 1, maybe 2 throughout a 34-game season that they're hitting a 6, right? Something's a little bit off that day. They're banged up, whatever. But, 7s, 8s, and 9s pretty much every weekend. And, EB's heard me say this before. Jason Batty, who was my goalkeeper coach in San Jose, was doing an interview one day, a couple years into me being there. And I remember reading it afterwards, and the words he used for me was consistently boring. And I remember reading it, and I did the same thing you. I'm like, well, shit, that doesn't sound good, does it? So I went and talked to him about like Bats. Literally, we've been working 3 years together, and I'm consistently boring. And he's like, think about it, Bush. He's like, that's actually a really high compliment. So when he explained himself, I'm like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like he knows what he's getting every day and every weekend, right? He knows what he's getting out of me. And so I started talking to Jamali about that. And I said, listen, that's kind of our little thing now. Like when he finishes warm-up and he starts walking in the locker room, I look at him like, what do I need today? And he's like, consistently boring. I'm like, exactly. Like, you give me that today. All right. And he's like, you got it. And it's just, again, it's about building a rapport with him, because I think there's a huge upside. And I've challenged him. I have challenged him. I said, I want him to be the goalkeeper there. I want him to be the guy where Bob says, we better sign him or we're going to lose a really good one. Right. Like I want him to, I want to have Bob get to that point with him. I want him, I challenged him in the fact of, he's a Jamaican number 2. And I told him, I said, why can't you beat Andre Blake out?
Yeah. What's his upside? So
why not?
Question.
Why?
So what's his upside? What's the ceiling? Like what can he do?
Yeah. Well, again, only he's he's the one that can push. I can help him get there, but he's the one that's got to go after it. He's an athlete. He's got good hands. He's got good range. His feet are good, but it's one of those things of how bad do you want it? How much work are you willing to do? And I said to him, I said, when we talked in very early in preseason, I said, listen, I respect Andre Blake. I think he's fantastic. Why can't you chase him down? Why can't you? Who's saying you can't?
Yeah, I mean, but you're not telling everybody. I mean, this guy had a great career at UConn. Matter of fact, Evie, this is pretty interesting. If you look at the Pittsburgh Riverhounds roster, you're not going to find a lot of academy guys, okay? And that's typical with USL, right? Versus MLS always, having more academy guys than, quote, college guys. Mm-hmm. They're sort of the opposite. They've got some guys, Michigan, Memphis, Seattle. One, Evie, I think you'll like, because we know his former head coach, Pete Peterson. They got a guy from Clayton State, a Division II guy. Yeah. I mean, what are the chances? You never, ever see that, right? It's always the Division I, and they're definitely got a lot of former Division I players there who were, came through the natural progression of that. They got drafted, right? They were second-round guys, third-round guys, and guess what? They're getting shipped on loan to, places like Pittsburgh, and they're doing the work there. And then Pittsburgh's making a decision. Hey, they've worked out. So they've got a good core, at least on paper, John. That's what it appears to me. What are your thoughts with those players from those environments?
Well, first of all, I like the way Lils does it. And I always call him Lils. We've called him that forever. So when I say Lils, I'm talking about Bob Lilly. But the way Lils does it, he won't sign anybody unless you come into he sees you. Whether he invites you into preseason, whether he invites you into one of the combines, he will not sign you before he puts eyes on you. And I've listened to him. Is
that unusual? Tell our listeners, is that unusual? Is that rare?
Sometimes it is.
I would think it would be normal, though, right? Or not?
Well, sometimes it is, especially with some of these guys. We have a couple that we signed from Charleston. We have two of them.
Right. Yeah.
And one's starting and one's coming off the bench, and they're both doing well for us. He knew who they were. He played against them.
Right. Yeah.
He still told both of them, you have to come into the combine. I need to see you.
Ah, okay.
Right. He wants to see eyes on you for 3 days. He wants to be able to coach you, talk to you, figure out, because it's not just about the football for him. He wants to make sure you understand the environment and the culture he's building. And he wants to make sure you fit in.
Get into, if you can, kind of locker room now, locker room last year, and how Bob kind of evolves, because he's kind of an interesting guy, the way he manages the locker room. I think it'd be interesting to hear how he handles that.
So last year, So last year, Bob had a little bit more experience on his roster, I would say. But sometimes with a little bit more experience comes a little bit more headaches. And some of them didn't buy in as much. And they weren't doing the work. And the first and foremost with Bob, you better put the work in. You have to put the work in. You have to chase. You have to battle. You have to scrap. You have to fight.
It's amazing you fit in there, John.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of me, isn't it? It's like the opposite. So
you've been a lazy prick your whole life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, seriously. This guy is just slaughtering me tonight.
I was just gonna say those two words to describe Jon Busch. That's probably the first time it's ever been said.
Yeah, exactly.
Lazy prick.
Yeah,
clearly sarcasm.
Well, not the prick part.
I've
the
heard
lazy part.
I've heard
the prick. Everybody says the prick part. The lazy part.
The lazy part. But I actually like it, right? I like the way he thinks. It's he wants to see you, but he also wants to see how bad you want to be here. Do you want to be part of Pittsburgh? Right? And that's something that he takes a lot of pride in. Again, this is his 6th year, and he was always like this everywhere he's gone, but it's he wants you to believe in the badge you're playing for, not just come here for a paycheck. And I think that's how he felt a little bit last year when he got some of these other senior players. and he spent a little bit more money, and they didn't reciprocate that. So I think he's gone back to the way he always did things. We may not be as polished, some of our players, and they're rough around the edges at times, but they're going to work. They're going to battle. He can mold them. And that's where it starts for us, putting in the effort and giving us an honest effort every day. Because, we're going to give you that same thing from our side to you guys as players. We're going to give you every opportunity to prove yourself, every opportunity to be successful. We're going to lay out our game plan every week for you, and if you execute more times than not, we're going to be successful. And you look at Bob's record, regardless of where he's coached, Vancouver, Montreal, Hershey, Rochester, here, he wins everywhere he goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you think the city is going to embrace you guys? And the reason I say it like that, first game, you have about 2,400 people. The attendance from USL is up, by the way, in case you didn't know it, 6%.
Okay.
All right. Phoenix sells out their home opener. But the numbers, these sound great as I'm saying them, but let's really review the numbers. The average attendance in the USL so far is about 6,400.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. So where do you see, there's 24 teams in the USL, 12 in each conference. Do you see it really, is it just going to be these little 6%, 10%, or is it really going to become a much more thing to do? Hit 10,000, hit 8,000, things like that. Now, Louisville City, you alluded to earlier, definitely, they're definitely up on the top. But some of these others, you look at Miami, first, why would you even have a team in Miami, right? Okay, makes no sense. 1,200 people, 1,400 people. What? Obviously they're going to lose their money.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a case by case scenario. I mean, it's you're going to have your Louisvilles and some other places. From what I've been told, I've only seen one home game so far here. What I've been told about last year, towards the end of the season, they did have a few sellouts here, and they're hoping for more this summer. Obviously, the weather wasn't great for our first game here. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But I also think if we start, winning some games and getting on a roll, and the weather changes as well, I think that'll lead to a little bit more. We're in a town, and from our stadium, I can see, the football stadium. I can see the baseball stadium. Luckily the Penguins are terrible right now, so maybe that helps us a little bit down the road. I don't know, but like
Rangers doesn't help
but we're in that battle too. We're in a town that you can see all the stadiums. So it's a tough market. I think ours will go up. Like I said, knowing what I've found out from talking to people in the office, like ours will go up a little bit more for sure. But I don't think we're gonna all of a sudden, go up whatever 50% or what, like bam, and we're 9,000-10,000 a game. I think we'll be 5 or 6 probably, in that ballpark. And again, I think it's on a per club basis. And I agree with you. I don't know why Miami still has a team. They were in the NASL when I played in the NASL, and I would have, they were drawing 50 people, and your cousins and brothers were showing up. Like that was it. So I don't get it now that there's an MLS club there as well. Like, why would you? It doesn't make sense to me. But
yeah, I
think the good thing is and the more important thing, fans are always important. Don't get me wrong, but I think. And Evie can speak even better on this topic than I can. I think the stability of the owners that are in now is far greater than it was in the early days when I came up through it. And I think that is so much more important.
Well, look at Rochester. We just talked about it last night.
Yeah.
Well, I think also too, it'd be interesting study to see of the teams that have, their own stadium now.
Yeah.
Right. The Louisville Cities, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, more Phoenix has their own stadium. the numbers are up there. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think weather obviously enters into it, but also be interesting to compare Major League Baseball and minor league baseball
Absolutely.
percentages.
Absolutely.
Right. Because people go to minor league baseball to drink beers. They go to Major League Baseball to drink beers too. Don't get me wrong, but you know what I'm saying. It's like and so but I think what a lot of these clubs have started to do, like Pittsburgh, is put together a youth program underneath it. Similar to not totally mirroring Europe. Because again, we're using a model that's in a different culture. But I think you look at some of the, I agree 100%. Miami should probably move to Osceola, Florida, or someplace that
Jacksonville.
That doesn't have doesn't have two, an MLS team and an MLS next team, or not next team, but MLS 2 team.
Yeah.
And I think those will filter out eventually.
I agree.
I think Rochester just ran into what a lot of teams do is they just, after a while things get boring, and it's the old thing. If you're not winning, people aren't coming.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the NFL, 3 or 4 years ago, the Titans were awful. Nobody went. I mean, but all of a sudden, they're good, and they're not the Bengals, but they're good. Okay, people go. Because they're winning.
No one says they're not the Bengals to be good, ever.
No, they do now.
I think you've hit on a point in a different way that I'm going to take it. These youth academies are supporting these USL teams, right? Because they've layered in, and income's income at the end of the day. All right, so you're only going to attract 4,000, 5,000 people, but you got 5,000 people, customers under you.
Sure.
Different ways to cut it, and you're starting to see that a lot more. If a USL championship team is been awarded, usually there's a youth program attached to it. So
and there should be. I mean, that's the way it should. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it back to you, EV, here in the studio.
Okay. Well, as always, Greg, great questions. Great. Greg is the interviewer of the group, and always comes with his A game and gives great questions, and we appreciate that. And and again, it's always great to talk to Bushy because we all know him and we all respect him and we all respect his views on the game. And it's interesting because, I always tell people this, back in the old days, back in the dark ages, right after the dinosaurs left the earth, I had a chance to play in a reserve game with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and Gordon Banks was playing in midfield because he didn't want to play in goal. He wanted to play in midfield. So I got to play in goal. And he said something to me that I've never forgotten. And he said, if you get to the point in this game where you feel like you can't learn anything, you're done.
Yeah.
And his point was, he said, even I learned something every day about that I didn't know before about the game, and this is Gordon Banks. And I was like, okay, got it, and
he was pretty good.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. He could probably play for most teams, and but and listening to Bushy's story, the Hibbs thing, like with most coaches, right? It's when you play games and lose is when you learn the most, right? When you coach games and lose is when you learn the most, and it's all is, everybody who's sitting here as a coach has been fired because for whatever reason, but you learn from it. and you get better for it. And as Bone said, it is a job where you get hired to get fired. Nobody has the 30-year job anymore. And
unless you're Belichick.
Well, unless you're Belichick, but getting back to the winning thing, right? The last 2 years, there's talk in Boston. It's like, what's Bill doing? He doesn't know what he's doing anymore. And it's crazy, but that's where we are. And so it's been very interesting to listen to it and to watch watch Bushy grow it, not only as a player, that was fun, but now it's kind of fun watching him grow as a coach. It's interesting. Great. Rabes and I are going up to beautiful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to see a game on the 14th, I believe. And really, I want to see the facility, because it sounds like a beautiful, beautiful place. So
yeah.
My son Chase wants a lot of gear, John, so just get ready.
I'll make sure the store is open and there's a discount code waiting for you.
There you go.
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but Bushy, thank you very much for joining us as always, and it's continued good luck with this season, because it's you're 4 games in or 5 games in a 34-game season. It's a long that's a long road in front of you. But you guys have gotten off to a good start. And one thing I did want to say before we finish up here is, Bob Lilly has always been the guy, in my estimation. And again, you look at coaches and as a goalkeeper coach, you kind of have a privileged place, because you can watch a lot and observe a lot. But he's one of the few coaches, I believe. Okay, maybe I'm wrong here, but I've always thought the plumbers on your team win games for you.
Yeah,
your plumbers win championships for you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he's always been that guy who, as you said, John, puts eyes on you. I always analogize it like putting together a good engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look for better parts all the time, and if you got better parts, you put them in your engine. Your engine runs better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you constantly have to, maintain and observe your engine if that's what you're working on. If that's what you're relying on.
Yeah.
And he's always been that guy who, didn't always have the flashiest of players, but always successful, right? And go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say he is, and I said this last week to Viss. He is the Bill Belichick of the USL. He is a ball coach.
Grinder.
He is a ball coach.
Yeah.
He wants to win games. He wants to coach every day. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
Doesn't even have a laptop computer. Doesn't care. Doesn't want his emails. Like, he is a ball coach every single day.
Right.
And it's in one breath, it is so amazing to just watch him, because that is what every day when he walks in, like, that's the only thing on his mind.
Yeah.
How do I make my team better? How do I find a way to win? How do I tweak the lineup? How do I, can I put this guy with that guy?
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. It's very simple in his world, if you will,
Yeah. And that's, and one of the other things that you and I have talked about before, and we'll finish up with this, but, he's probably and I could be wrong on this again, but I don't think I am. He's probably the least traveled coach in pro soccer in the United States.
Yeah.
Meaning he's only been with 2 or 3 teams over a career of about 30 years.
Yeah.
He doesn't chase. He doesn't chase.
No, he doesn't chase. He moves because they fall.
How many guys
usually? Yeah. No. I mean,
Yeah. Which means, you know what? He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that everybody enjoyed this time. As I said earlier, it's a convenient time waster, and we appreciate you wasting time with us. But it's always fun. Thank you, Bone, for leading the charge on the interview. Thank you, Rage, for getting back safe from Florida and sort of lighting up the room without turning on the lights. And
sunburned. Yes.
Is that with the sunburn? Yeah. Glowing. That glow you see over Terrace Park. That's Greg Haber. So, and Bushy, as always, thanks for joining us. And it's always a pleasure to see you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's always my pleasure to waste 2 hours of you guys' lives. So I appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Hey,
we appreciate it.
No matter what, we're proud of you. No matter what.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah,
so, HPG Goalkeeping, www.hpggoalkeeping.com. Soccer Village, www.soccervillage.com.
Wow.
Okay. Well, yeah, there you go.
Oh,
and don't forget to check out the 3 Old Goalies. We got a website. Yeah, we got a website. Okay. www.3oldgoalies.com. And 3 people, it's not the number, THREE, oldgoalies.com. And
I would look at Little Miami Brewery someday.
Bingo. Raves, I was just going to say, take us out of here with some really exciting news that you've been working particularly hard on for us. Take it away.
We're going to do a remote at Little Miami Brewery in Milford, Ohio, coming up in June. And
a remote.
Come. It's going to be fun. A lot to come. Bushy can't come because that loser has a job. But we will be here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and more to come. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, we're going to actually go out into our public.
Uh-oh.
And maybe, I don't know, could be wrong. Maybe all 12 of our listeners will be there.
Both of them will be there.
So that's what we're hoping for. But seriously, Braves has worked really hard on this, and it's a cool little brew pub restaurant. And they've I don't know, we got them at a weak moment. They've decided to let us do a remote there. which if we do a good job, they might invite us back. But they're willing to take a chance on it. So we're gonna show up and do our
Greg, thank you so much.
Amy did it.
Yeah,
Of course she did. We didn't even have to ask that. We knew that. We knew that answer.
Thank you, Amy.
But that's June 4th. And do we have a time yet on that, Rapes?
Yeah, it should be 5 to 7 or 5 to 9, depending on.
That's AM, by the way. That's AM.
No, it won't be AM, but yeah. So put that on your calendar, all you 3 Old Goalies listeners, and we'll hopefully see you out there. And until next week, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for listening and watching the 3 Old Goalies. Be sure to join us next time. Like, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our great content. You can follow us on Instagram or Twitter. Can't get enough of the 3 Old Goalies? Be sure to check us out at www.3oldgoalies.com.